Hello, and thank you for joining us for CBM Calling today. It's Tuesday, May the 5th, and today we're going to be talking about work, which is a very intriguing topic and seems very current for how work has entirely changed for many of us during this crisis time. But before that, we want to just say thank you to all of you who tuned in for Solidarity Sunday this past Sunday. We had very good engagement, and we heard that there were many of our CBM friends who were watching from all around the world. So we just want to say thank you for doing that. And if you missed it, don't feel bad. There's still an opportunity for you to see it. It is on our website, cbmin.org. You can go there to watch it. And if you have friends or you know people in your church who don't have Facebook, they can watch it from our website. And of course, it is pinned on our website page as well, which I'm sure you can see right now. Today I'm joined by Brenda Halk, who, Brenda, I am not going to screw up your title twice, so I've written it down. Brenda is CBM's Senior Associate for Strategic Projects. So I got that out. Brenda, I think you're proud of me that I did it right this time. And as well, I'm joined by Michael Waddell, who is serving as our global field staff in the Philippines. He is currently in New Brunswick, where they have just returned a few weeks ago. Today, we're going to be talking about work. This is a very interesting topic, I think, that feels very current for this time that we're in. And so we're going to give the little question that we've given to all of the people that are watching, and we're going to throw that question out right now, which is, how has your work been impacted by the COVID-19 crisis? So if you want to share about that, please post as we're watching, just so that we can see some of your responses. But first, I'm going to just throw it over to Brenda, because Brenda, today we were going to talk about Marketplace Ministry. We still are, but I don't think we can do that without giving it some context to say, in this last few months, work has just been thrown into a whole other world that I think has been so unexpected for so many millions of people. I know for myself, I counted, because I knew we were having this conversation today. This is day 35 of working from home for me. And for many people, it's been even longer than that. And it's really changed my whole perception about work. So I'm just wondering, Brenda, if you can talk a little bit more about what Marketplace Ministries is, this term, and also about how important work is in terms of our own identities, and how work and faith, how they correspond.
Sure. Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, I feel like our whole world has been shaken to the core. I feel like all the pieces of a puzzle have been tossed onto the floor, and no one knows how they're going to be put back together. All we know is there are going to be some pieces missing, and it's not going to be the same puzzle when it's finished. But Marketplace Ministries is considered the integration of faith and work, sometimes called the secular sacred divide, sometimes called the difference between Sunday to Monday, but it really means integrating work as part of your holy purpose and your whole role of yourself in your life. So it becomes very much part of our identity. Eugene Peterson has said the workplace is a primary location for spiritual formation. So now, if that's your identity, and if your work was your calling, now your workplace is in your home. I don't think any of those principles have changed, but what's changed is people have lost work, people are working from home, people have been laid off. There's fear of whether they will ever work again or get a job back that they had loved, and businesses have closed. Some will never come back. Some will come back in a different form. But it's really shaken, I think, people's identity. There's been a lot of talk about the anxiety and the stress and the depression around not only the financial aspects and the fear and the uncertainty ahead of us, but also of the loss of identity through your work. But I would say that even though that has changed, your identity is still there. Your work has changed. You're now all maybe doing homeschooling. You may be doing something you didn't want to do, such as making meals or being at home all day. But your work, no matter what you're doing, is your work with God, and that God is in that work with you. And I think the big challenge for all of us is to find meaning and purpose in what you're doing today, even if it's not what you were doing before COVID-19. I think the other thing is the resilience. We've seen such rapid change, but we've seen this before. We've seen plants are retooling from making auto parts to making PPE. Some places are closing, others are hiring. It's a huge transition. When I said we've seen it before, it's very much or very similar to what was seen during World War II, where the whole world turned upside down, plants retooled, men left, women came into the workforce. That was a huge change in how work was perceived. And it was also accompanied by this horrible fear and uncertainty and danger of not knowing how long it's going to go on. So, but your work also is not just what you're remunerated for. It's also your volunteer work, your homework, your whatever you're doing is your service, your integration with your faith and your work. And God has called us to work. We may not be working at what we want to right now, but we're still working, and we need the resilience and the faith and the hope to see this through.
Brenda, I'm glad you made that distinction that there's work that's paid and there's work that's unpaid, because often when we say work, we just think of like our jobs, and then what about all those people who work at home, right? Raising children, taking care of families, and taking care of seniors or whatever. That's work as well, really valuable work. So I'm glad you drew that out, that there is paid and unpaid work, and there's redemptive value in both of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Michael, I'm just wondering, for a lot of people, there's this kind of, as Brenda called it, the sacred secular divide. And, many of us were raised that way, to think that, what we did Monday to Friday was just to facilitate, us being able to help do ministry work on Sunday, or to be able to work at the church, help at the church somehow. I'm wondering if you can, I think this marketplace ministry thing is really changing that whole paradigm. And if you could just tell us biblically where you kind of see the basis of marketplace ministry and being able to find meaning through your work.
Yeah, sure. That's a great question to ponder and think about for all of us, I think. And I'll just, I guess, draw our attention back to what Brenda did say about work being not just our paid work, because I think we often do think about work in that context. And so as I share about sort of our biblical framework around marketplace ministry, just keep that in mind, because it is really important that we recognize that work is sort of all encompassing. And so, we could look into the Bible. We could look right back to Genesis and go all the way through the books of the Bible. We would find countless passages of scriptures, countless parables from Jesus's teachings, countless sort of teachings through Paul's letters, and all through the Bible. The ones that come to mind are like Jesus's teaching in the Sermon on the Mount, where he begins by saying that we are the salt of the earth and the light of the world. And really, he's challenging his disciples, challenging us today, that we are to really integrate ourselves as his followers into the fabric of society. That we are to be present in a world that is dark and is decaying. So I think, there's verses like that that really help us understand what it means to be followers of Jesus, sort of out in marketplaces, but also in the context that even of our homes, as we've talked about already, doing work. But I'll just draw our attention quickly, because in CBM, probably for the last 5 years or so, that we've been sort of working through marketplace ministry, and what does it look like for us as an organization to engage our partners in ministry in the marketplace. The verse that we've sort of clung to is Colossians 3:23. I think we've got a slide maybe on the screen for that, but it just says, whatever your task, or you could substitute that word for work, but whatever your task, put yourself into it as done for the Lord and not for your masters. And, this is a verse that really the Apostle Paul here is really just, if we go back in the sort of the earlier verses and chapters of Colossians, he's really addressing some of the cultural and societal pressures that the people of the church in Colossians are really facing. Things that would be economic pressures, political pressures, social pressures, religious pressures, similar things that we're dealing with today, right? As we think about this whole pandemic and the challenges that we face. And these pressures were pushing them sort of away from their faith in God. And Paul, in the beginning of chapter 3, where this verse is found, he starts to really sort of become practical in his talk, in his language to the people, and is really just sort of taking an example from the typical Roman household, and he's really just teaching them, showing them how they can reframe their life or reshape their life around Jesus and his teachings. And really what he's saying here is that Christian faith should not be, what you've already said, Jennifer, should not be sort of set aside for Sunday or in the church or those kinds of activities, but that our Christian faith really should extend to every aspect of our life, not just Sundays, but also Monday and into our workplaces or into the public spaces of society, whether that's grocery stores or gas stations or doctors' offices, but just how we live out our faith in the context of everyday societal life.
I like that word you use, reframing, because I think that's a nice way to visualize how to reframe work as it's situated within our whole walk with Jesus, our own discipleship, because it often feels like it's very separated. And really, when you reframe something, you're putting it all within one basket. Yeah. So I like that word a lot. Before, Brenda, I ask you about some specifics around how CBM is what we're doing in Marketplace Ministry. I think we want to just say hello to a few people who are watching. So I know Nancy Webb. Hi, Nancy. Good friend Nancy, who I went to Kenya with. That was my first trip overseas. I was on that trip with Nancy. And so Estella Ng. Hi, Estella. Always good to have your support. And Jason Johnson says, hi, and if the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, then the follower of Jesus, nothing is secular. Wise words from Jason. So thank you all who are watching. I want Brenda, if you could tell us more about what CBM is doing specifically around Marketplace Ministry.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, one of the things that we're working in several different areas, and Marketplace Ministries is multifaceted and can look quite different in each field that we work in, depending on the needs there and how we can engage and support our partners. One area we work in, is we call it competency, is really training, helping to support and train business people and people who are employed in skills that they can use to improve both their working and their business. And examples of that might be self-help groups of small groups that start small businesses in different areas that receive basic training on core business skills. We also do, with Joyce Locke, some business training in Hong Kong. And so however we can come in along and support people. And it's also one key thing I'm always aware of is that helping people within their areas of work doesn't mean just helping people who own businesses. Many people are employees, which gives it a different spin. They have a little less control over their day and how they can work. So it's a lot of training support in those areas. A second area that we work in, we call it conceiving or incubating, and it's really fostering small businesses that are starting up, fostering and incubating new ideas for livelihood engagement, for income generating projects that we have in India, things that will help people to provide food and money for their family.
Yeah, and I'm just going to jump in, I guess, with a couple other things that where CBM is currently working in Marketplace Ministry. We call this next one contagious. I don't know if it's an appropriate reference to make or not.
Very appropriate right now.
But if we think about COVID-19 and how it has really, just sort of spread around the world and infected people, not in ways that we wanted to, but when we think about being contagious within our Marketplace Ministries, we're really talking about linking people, creating those kind of connections between whether it's, somebody here in Canada who has an expertise and they want to share that with somebody else, whether it's with our global partners or someone else even here in Canada, just sort of sharing those kinds of knowledges and expertises. Could be an accountant, could be somebody that's a specialist in marketing or web design, or I mean, the possibilities are endless. It can also be mentoring. For me, I'm a former business person, so a lot of my ministry in the Philippines actually is consulting and mentoring young business leaders. So that's a way that we link people together. And practically speaking, we have a ministry in the Philippines called Food for Life. That is a social enterprise of rice farmers that we've brought together sort of in a cooperative kind of model. And, they were really wanting to explore some new techniques in rice farming. And so we were able to identify somebody here in Canada who had expertise in that area. He was able to come to where we were in the Philippines and was able to share his knowledge and expertise with the farmers as part of Food for Life. And he was also able to learn from their experiences as well, that helped him now as he goes on and helps other people. So, those are just sort of natural connections that we're trying to make in terms of linking people around the context of work. The next one is a word we call collaborating, but really it's the idea of investing, whether that's financially investing in work or business globally, or whether it's investing resources of other kinds, as I've already mentioned, expertise, knowledge and experiences, those kinds of things. Another example from the Philippines of how CBM has invested, we have a social enterprise that's currently sort of in the launching phase. It's called Bugana Livelihood Center. Bugana is a Hiligaynon word that means abundance. And so it's really sort of a holistic approach to business. And so CBM has invested startup capital, working capital for Bugana Livelihood Center, which is in partnership with our Filipino partner, Kabugana and Philippine Ministries. And so that's one way where sort of our Canadian Baptist family has been able to support, businesses through investing in those kinds of ways. And, Bugana, you can read about it on our blog. It's an interesting thing. I wish I had more time to talk about, because I think it's an exciting new model of engaging people in the marketplace. But I won't say any more about that at this time.
We will encourage people, though, if they want to find out more about that project, which is very exciting, to email Michael. You can find Michael and Melanie's page on CBM's website. And there is a little button there you can press, and it will pop up in your Outlook that you can send an email to Michael. So if you are interested, please go ahead and
we'd welcome that.
Yeah. So Brenda, I think there's one more.
There's one.
Go ahead.
There is one. The last one that we talk about is contextual. And this really, for me, defines the discipleship piece, that how, as disciples of Christ, are we integrating our faith with our work. It's also a piece that's most relevant to our churches and our people in Canada. The highlight of last year was our conference that we held in November. We called it the Good Work Conference, on helping people to explore the integration of their faith and work, explore how they can reach people for Christ through the marketplace. Paul Stevens, who's well known at Regent College and founder of the Institute for Marketplace Transformation, was our keynote speaker. He's been passionate about this for over 55 years. And CBM has been very grateful for his coming alongside and working with us as we develop our Marketplace Ministries. Paul's fellowship group, his fellows group, his IMT fellows group, I've been participating in that for a year, which has been a great learning experience. And contextual is a piece where we can help our churches, our pastors, the people in the pews to understand what this means with their walk with God. And there's a piece of this for helping pastors to understand, how do you pastor business people and work people in your congregation? And especially in these COVID-19 times, I imagine this has become critical for them, as people are losing jobs, people are losing finances, they're losing what they thought was a very set, straight path in their life. And how do you pastor that when you're without the biblical teachings that are behind this? So the contextual also enters the area of theology of work as well.
Brenda and Michael, we have to conclude our conversation shortly, but I want to at least ask what prayer requests you might have specifically. I know, Michael, you, through the projects that you mentioned, a lot of those people are day workers, and we haven't even really begun to talk about the impact this crisis has had on people who need to work today so they can eat tomorrow. But for sure, a lot of those projects with our partners in the Philippines would have been deeply impacted by that. I'm just wondering if there are any specific prayer requests that either one of you would have.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, you know, around the world, our partners are just like we are here in Canada, learning how to adapt to this sort of new norm. I don't even know if we're in the new norm yet. I don't think we are, but, you know, just learning to adapt with what it means to continue to minister in this new reality. And, you know, so I think we do need to just call our Canadian church and our supporters to be praying for our partners around the world as they do adapt and as they do sort of change the way, the scope of their ministries, perhaps. You know, plans that they had for 2020 are kind of out the window, and, you know, they're having to, as Brenda said earlier, retool, revision, and really just try to address the needs of people in their communities. And as you've rightly pointed out, those who are day workers, those are migrant workers, I'd even throw in there farmers and farm workers who I work a lot with. You know, they have been deeply, deeply impacted by this COVID-19 pandemic. And really, before we left the Philippines, I had a number of people say to me, the greater risk to them was not coronavirus. The greater risk was hunger. You know, where was their next meal going to come from? And so, you know, we just really, I think, need to be praying for our partners and as they address those kinds of needs in communities around the world.
Brenda, do you have anything specific?
Yeah, if I think in the Canadian context, for all of our Canadians who are feeling the stresses of either loss of work or work that is now fearful for them to go to, those frontline workers who leave their families every day and go out and are fighting COVID-19 in our long-term care in our hospitals, even for the grocery workers. And for those who have lost work, the financial stresses, the anxiety and the depression that centers around all of this, even for those who have to homeschool, who did not choose teaching as their profession. And pray for our churches and our pastors as they learn what they always knew, which is the building is not the church, the people are, and they're finding unique and creative ways to worship, and pastors as they minister through these times. And for all of us, that we continue, no matter what we find ourselves doing day to day, that know that it was God's work for you that day and that you would find purpose and meaning in it.
Thank you, Brenda. That's a good place for us to end this conversation. Thank you to you both so much for your insights today. This is a huge topic. We've just barely scratched the surface, so we want people to go away and think about it and say, you know what, there's places they can go to find more information. For sure, you can connect with either Brenda or Michael, but there's also a lot of other places they can find information as well. So Brenda mentioned Paul Stevens and the Institute for Institute for
Marketplace
Transformation. So it's imtglobal.org. If you go onto that website, he has a video series called Doing God's Business, and he is giving it away for free. Is that correct, Brenda?
That's right.
Okay, so wow, what a deal. Anyone can go on there and view the first episode for free. But if you want to get all the episodes, you can actually send us a message on Facebook and we will send you a secret code, which I think we're actually allowed to do. Paul said we're allowed to do this. We're not doing this behind his back. We will send you a code that you can use to get the entire series for free. And it can be done as a group study. So if there are small groups out there who want to do this together, you can watch the videos, you can answer there's a guide and do the questions together. So that's imtglobal.org. Go take a look at that. And also you can pick up Paul Stevens' book, he has many, but I think a good baseline one would be Taking Your Soul to Work. So that's one you can get anywhere. Taking Your Soul to Work would be a really good place for anybody to start their reading on this topic. All right, we want to thank everyone who's tuned in today, and thank you so much, Brenda and Michael, for joining me. And tomorrow, it's going to be a very interesting conversation. Tomorrow on CBM Calling, Hudson and Sarah Trenholm from Debert, Nova Scotia. We've all heard about what the tragedy that's happened in Debert. The Trend Homes and also Aaron and Erica Kenny, who were our former Africa team leaders, they will be talking tomorrow on CBM Calling about how you care for communities in the aftermath of tragedy. So that should be a very, very good conversation. Well, thank you so much, everyone, and have a good afternoon.